Good morning, colleagues. My name is Zodwa Ngubani. I'm from the Environmental Planning and Climate Protection Department of eThekwini Municipality. Today, I'll be talking to you about balancing effective conservation with sustainable resource use in the context of eThekwini's protected areas. I will kick off my presentation by giving you some background to Durban's natural assets. Durban is located in the middle of the Maputoland-Pondoland-Albany hotspot. Therefore, it has a significant levels of biodiversity and highly threatened. It has 3 of the country's 8 terrestrial biomes, 8 broad vegetation types, and over 2,000 plant species. What remains within eThekwini Municipality or Durban is 95,000 hectares of open spaces. That is represented by the map that you see on your right. These are areas that incorporate areas of high biodiversity value linked together in a viable network of open spaces. According to the World Report of 2017, a total asset value of natural and semi-natural areas is about 47.8 billion rands, and also an annual ecosystem service flow value of 4.2 billion. Over the years, we have been successful in expanding our conservation estate, with 7.0% of the 95,000 of open spaces under some form of protection. Municipal protected areas are indicated in dark green color on the map, and those indicated in yellow are either privately owned or are owned by parastatal. As the municipality, we've done very well in expanding our network of protected areas. However, there has also been a significant increase in the incidences of illegal resource exploitation from our protected areas. The protected areas mainly affected are those that are adjacent to dense, low-income housing or settlement. Obviously, then there has been a decline in our fauna species in those protected areas that are affected by dog hunting. This is obviously a major concern for the overall health of those ecosystems. Another issue that we've also been dealing with is unauthorized multi-plant harvesting within our protected areas. If you look at the picture, especially the one on the right, you can see that the plant has been harvested in a destructive manner. Another major issues that we're dealing with is livestock grazing within our protected areas. Also of major concern for us is illegal sand mining that often is undertaken in our buffer areas. To address these challenges, it was important to unpack socio-economic context of areas most affected by overexploitation of natural resources. An 8-com conservation area that is in the outer west of Durban was selected for a socio-ecological study based on the number of incidences reported on site. This area, most of the areas around this protected area has been transformed. This reserve is one of the remaining open spaces that community rely on for grazing, multi-plant harvesting, etc. But also this is an important site for biodiversity conservation with mainly pristine KZNSS and pockets of scarped forest. The aim of the study or of the survey was to document local perceptions and values regarding the landscape and the traditional use and management of natural resources in the area. And these were the findings on the socio-economic profile. A small proportion of individuals within these households were economically active. Large proportions of these individuals having only attained partially secondary schooling with high dependence on state welfare and engage in limited employment opportunity. So in overall, we're dealing with a profile, with a community profile that is relatively below the poverty line. Key findings with regards to environmental perceptions. Overall, community members revealed a positive attitude towards conserving nature, but also they highlighted a high dependence on natural resources for subsistence purposes. The majority of the activities that were taking place within the municipal conservation area were perceived to be minor threats. There was also an absence of local norms and laws pertaining to natural resource management. And the recommendations from the study were that we need to explore controlled resource use on site, especially in terms of cattle grazing and multi-plant harvesting, as communities indicated that they rely in these two very heavily. We were also advised to explore and describe options with regards to the provision of alternative resources instead of use of our protected areas. Based on the outcome of the study, a decision was taken to pilot a cattle grazing project, which was to be undertaken in a mixed-use zone of the protected area, which is an area that is not pristine. These areas are highlighted in light green, having been zoned a mixed-use area, while areas highlighted in dark green are zoned as low-use areas to prevent unauthorized grazing in the low-use area. This project was introduced in February 2021 following an informal agreement with the Cattle Owners Association. Since the introduction of the project, no incidences of grazing has been reported in a low-use area, and cattle herders have become champions in terms of reporting of incidences of dog hunting, sand mining, and other activities on site. Also, as the municipality, we are exploring providing multi-harvesting, but in a form of, establishing a nursery for traditional healers in an area, in that particular area. The research and monitoring, because if you undertaking resource use within the protected area, you've got to monitor and ensure that it does not, or it's not having a negative impact on the protected area. So due to the lack of data required to develop a grazing management prescriptions, a precautionary principle was applied to allow for a maximum of 50 cattle in the 160-hectare area. No fail conditions has been undertaken, but it's one of the activities that we'll be engaging in. In terms of the ecological study, we need to quantify and describe the impact of cattle grazing on the resource. And the data collected would be used to further inform decisions concerning the management of annual stocking rate for the site. Resource use in protected areas. There's a recognition that without the support of local people, conservation efforts are likely to fail. To be effective, protected areas need to succeed in conserving biodiversity while providing livelihood opportunities that safeguard continued socio-economic benefits. These are provided for in the international, national, and provincial legislation, such as the Protected Areas Act of 2003. eThekwini's resource use policy. eThekwini municipality is in the process of developing a resource use policy that seeks to formalize resource use within its protected areas under certain conditions. We hope that this will strengthen relationships with communities. We'll also use resource use as a resource management tool. Would also want to have control over the use of resources and prevent further destructive harvesting practices. The objectives would be to establish criteria for the conservative use of biological resources in the interest of maintaining and improving biodiversity, and to define the decision-making procedure on the use of biological resources. Resource use within our protected areas will be undertaken under these principles. It can only occur within parameters of the applicable legislation. Support resource use provided it is sustainable. We clearly define resource use zone and a no use zone. So apply precautionary measures where data is not available to develop management prescriptions. Conclusion. To be effective, protected areas need to succeed in conserving biodiversity while providing livelihood opportunities for adjacent communities. eThekwini's resource use policy would aim to make resource use permissible within municipal protected areas as part of benefit sharing that seek to strengthen relationships with communities. Resource use projects will be done in areas zoned for resource use in accordance to the management plan. Resource use project will be supported by research and monitoring projects to ensure ecological and social sustainability. Would also explore and describe options with regard to the provision of alternative resources instead of use of our protected areas.